On June 3, 1839, a Chinese official named Lin Zexu stood on a beach near Humen and watched more than 1,000 tons of opium dissolve into trenches of lime and seawater, 20,000 chests destroyed over 22 days by order of the Qing Emperor. He called it a stand against poison flooding into his country. 3 years later, after a war fought largely over that single act, Britain walked away with a small, sparsely populated island near the mouth of the Pearl River. Britain would go on holding it in one form or another for 155 years, longer than the opium trade itself lasted. This is the dispute where a war over a drug ended in the founding of a city that would outlive the empire that took it. By the early 1800s, British merchants, operating through the East India Company and private traders, were selling Indian-grown opium into China on a massive and illegal scale, reversing a trade imbalance that had drained silver out of Britain for decades. Qing law banned opium. The trade continued anyway, with the collusion of local officials and foreign merchants both. In 1839, the Qing government sent Lin Zexu to Canton to end it. He blockaded foreign merchants, demanded their opium stocks, and destroyed them at Humen without full compensation. War broke out between Britain and China within months. Britain won. The 1842 Treaty of Nanjing ceded Hong Kong Island to Britain, opened 5 Chinese ports to foreign trade, and required a large indemnity. Every fact in that paragraph is agreed by both governments today. Whether the war and the treaty that ended it were ever legitimate is not. 1834. Britain's first attempt at direct government-to-government contact with the Qing, under Lord Napier, collapses. Chinese officials will only deal with foreign merchants through intermediaries, not equals, and Napier dies within months of the standoff. 1839, Lin Zexu's blockade and the Humen destruction. 1839 to 1842, the First Opium War, fought mostly at sea and along the coast, ends in a lopsided British military victory. August 1842, the Treaty of Nanjing. 1856 to 1860, a second Opium War, sparked by a new dispute, ends with the Convention of Peking, ceding the Kowloon Peninsula outright. 1898, a further agreement leases an area called the New Territories to Britain for 99 years, expiring in 1997. 1984, Britain and China sign a joint declaration agreeing the entire territory, island, peninsula, and leased land alike, will return to China when the lease runs out. July 1, 1997, Hong Kong is handed back. Britain's own parliament nearly didn't authorize this war at all. The vote to proceed passed by just 9 votes, 271 to 262, after a bitter debate in April 1840. The pro-war argument wasn't built on opium's morality, it was built on property and parity. Lin Zexu had confiscated some 20,000 chests of British merchants' opium without full compensation to the government. That was an uncompensated seizure of British subjects' property, and Parliament's own resolution spoke of compensation for opium seized, not of defending the drug trade itself. Underneath that sat an older grievance. Since Lord Napier's failed 1834 mission, Britain had wanted direct, equal footing diplomatic contact with the Qing court and been refused. Foreign Secretary Palmerston's instructions were blunt. Britain would not hold communications through the intervention of private and irresponsible individuals. The war, in this frame, was about forcing China to treat Britain as a sovereign equal, with the opium dispute as the flashpoint, not the cause. China's case starts with the trade itself. British merchants operating through the East India Company deliberately expanded opium sales into China specifically to reverse a silver deficit. Chinese tea, silk, and porcelain had been draining British silver for a century, and opium, sources say, was the corrective. By the early 1830s, silver worth millions of taels was flowing out of China annually. Addiction was spreading, and Qing officials and soldiers were not exempt. Lin Zexu, still honored today as a national hero, is remembered for treating this as what it was: a sovereign nation enforcing its own drug law against foreign traffickers, not a provocation inviting war. The Treaty of Nanjing that followed is taught in Chinese schools as the first of the unequal treaties, a term with roots in early 20th century Chinese legal reform, not a Communist Party invention, marking the start of what's called the Century of Humiliation. In this frame, the war didn't punish a rogue Chinese official. It punished China for enforcing a law inside its own borders. This dispute has an unusual feature. One side has largely stopped defending itself. The 1840 vote to go to war nearly failed, and the loudest voice against it, a young MP named William Gladstone, called it a war more unjust in its origin than any he had ever read of, arguing that China had every right to expel a trade its own law banned. That argument lost by 9 votes in 1840. It has, in a sense, been winning ever since. Britain's own National Archives today teaches the Treaty of Nanjing to schoolchildren using the term unequal treaty, the same phrase Chinese textbooks use, and British museums now display Lin Zexu's letter to Queen Victoria alongside British accounts of the war. Unlike most disputes in this series, this isn't really an argument between two governments defending opposite positions anymore. It's closer to an argument one government is still having, slowly, with its own past. Every dispute in this series has been a live argument, two sides still defending opposing accounts. This one is different. Hong Kong was returned in 1997, and Britain's own institutions now broadly agree with China's verdict on how it was taken. But agreement didn't arrive quickly, and it didn't arrive for free. It took 155 years for the land to change hands back, and closer to 2 centuries for the judgment to fully catch up to it. Decades longer than anyone who lived through 1839 could have lived to see. Maybe the lesson is that consensus isn't the end of a historical dispute. It's just a slower, quieter cost than a war, paid mostly by people on both sides who never got a say in the fight that shaped the place they called home. A war fought over a drug ended in a city that would outlast the empire that founded it, and a moral verdict it took nearly 200 years for both sides to agree on. Next time, we go back further still to the voyage that started an entire hemisphere's worth of disputes, Columbus, and the argument over what exactly 1492 began. See you then.